15. That's right. Vashanti Yatra Purusha Sarve Vaikunta Mortaya Ye Nimitta Nimittena Dharmendaradayan Harim Vashanti Yatra Purusha Sarve Vaikunta Mortaya Ye Nimitta Nimittena Dharmenaradayan Harim Vashanti Yatra Purusha Sarve Vaikunta Mortaya Ye Nimitta Nimittena Dharmenaradayan Harim Vashanti Yatra Purusha Sarve Vaikunta Mortaya Ye Nimitta Nimittena Dharmenaradayan Harim Vashanti, they live. Yatra, where? Purusha, persons. Sarve, all. Vaikunta Mortaya, having a four-handed form, similar to that of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Yea, those Vaikunta persons, Animitta, without desire for sense gratification, Nimittena, caused by, Dharmena, by devotional service, Aradayan, continuously worshiping, Harim, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Translation. In the Vaikunta planets, all the residents are similar in form to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They all engage in devotional service to the Lord without desires for sense gratification. Please repeat. In the Vaikunta planets, all the residents are similar in form to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They all engage in devotional service to the Lord without desires for sense gratification. Purport. The residence and the form of living in Vaikuntha are described in this verse. The residents are all like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. In the Vaikuntha planets, Krishna's plenary feature as four-handed Narayan is the predominating deity, and the residents of Vaikuntha Loka are also four-handed. Just contrary to our conception here in the material world. Nowhere in the material world do we find a human being with four hands. And in Vaikuntha Loka, there is no occupation but the service of the Lord. And this service is not rendered with a purpose. Although every service has a particular result, the devotees never aspire for the fulfillment of their own desire. Their desires are fulfilled by rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapinam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svabadantigam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utabadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagvadatam Sagana Raghunatam Vidam Tam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sayatam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Sarupto Pangur Mama Mandamater Gati Matsar Vasva Padam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Dibyat Brindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimad Ratnagara Singha Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Pestalabi Savyamano Smarami Sriman Rasa Rasarambi Bamsi Batatastati Tata Stitaha Karshan Venus Vanar Gopir Gopinata Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sade Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyas Cha Kripasindubyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vishanti Acha Prush. Somebody's ringing a bell somewhere. Oh, okay. I thought it was, somebody. Sarve Vaikuntha Mortaya, Yi Namita Namitena, Dharmena Radayana Rim. In the Vaikuntha planets, all the residents are similar in form to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They all engage in devotional service to the Lord without desires for sense gratification. So, in the midst of the horror show, the pregnancy of, the illegal pregnancy of Diti, hearing all about illicit sex life, which is something that we have to see and see right in front of our face every day in profuse quantity. And our spiritual, devotional intelligence has to be very sharp to filter it, just like the filter upstairs. Getting drinking water, if it gets kind of old, then we start to taste the fluoride and all the yuck in the New York City water. So if we're not careful to keep the filter in our consciousness strong, then the material world seeps in. And this material world, we should always know, is not our home, because devotees don't belong in a place of repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. We were hearing that yesterday. The living entities, so what is the difference between Vaikuntha and Kunta? And it's interesting, like you're going to name such a glorious place where there's no anxiety and there's no birth, death, disease, and old age. And like we're hearing today, nobody has an ulterior motive. Nobody has a purpose separate from Krishna's. Always keep in mind that if we become frustrated or upset the way people with non-devotional motivation, even amongst devotees, those who are not pure devotees, they are invariably, or to be expected, not to be equipped or able to treat, relate, associate, etc., properly. Therefore, we are advised to be very tolerant, forgiving, and merciful. That's why in this material world particular, the most important symptom or quality of the Brahmin, of one cultivating spiritual life, is forgiveness. So it's interesting. Vaikuntha, the place without anxiety. Vaikuntha is ascension ultimately to Goloka Vrindavan. And it's interesting how, I'll make this point, living creatures must be full of cares and anxiety, and not just this planet, from the highest down to the lowest, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, 8th chapter. All are places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. People forget, this is the, what's the Sanskrit? The covering potency of Maya. Even a hog living in filthy stool thinks he's completely satisfied. But from an objective perspective, it's worse than obnoxious. It's hellish, such an existence. Prabhupada was taking a morning walk in Vrindavan. The then Chattikar Road, now Bhaktivedanta Swami Marg, going towards the Chattikar, towards the Delhi-Agra highway, and absolutely nothing. The road was barely paved. It was just like a dusty, and there was nothing on either side, just like maybe agricultural fields here and there. So there was a camel, and the camel was just like in the Bhagavatam, chewing its thorny twigs, and the blood was flowing. He said, Prabhupada said, these are the Griha Maidis. They're enjoying the false enjoyment of enjoying the taste of their own blood being cut by the thorns. And you can read extensively in the second canto, the dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. This is not at all an exaggeration, comparing this to, Prabhupada says, the diseased fellows in this material world, the mundane fruit of actors. So they must be full of cares and anxieties. Why? Because the material planets, one cannot live eternally. This is a very good point to bring to people right away, especially like Challenger, an atheist, or just plain nonsensical person who wants to not so much humiliate or ridicule you, as we were saying, when these things happen, they're doing it ultimately to Krishna. Envy starts at the top. Don't worry about other people. Get your own relationship with Krishna calibrated right. Krishna wants us to go back home, back to Godhead, more than we could want to go back home, back to Godhead in our best consciousness. So therefore, Krishna arranges in this material world frustration after frustration, scenario after scenario, to point people, ultimately, here I am, take shelter of me. Everything that's going on, it's so important to Krishna that he'll let them make their big, big cities, their big, big empires, their big, big politics, their big, big name, fame, even if they're so attached, their false ego is so strong, their material desires are so intense, that maybe within the midst of however many years they live, they maybe just for a glimmer, they think, this is all useless. And you see a lot of times that the ultimate realization for such people is they commit suicide. Because, they've risen to the top and there's nothing there. But to speak of nothing, it's just terrible anxiety. Guru Garanga Prabhu, you can listen on the Prabhupada memories. He was not a hippie. He was, a well-adapted, intelligent, and well-qualified young man. And he was being guided by his seniors, parents, or society at large, mentors. Yeah, you go to the next tier. You did it, but now you have to go to the next level. But I'm not happy. When you get to the next level, it's like we're climbing the mountain. Remember 2 years ago we climbed that Shankamunk mountain up by Mayapur Chandras in the snow, in the muck, in the mush, and I'm like, from the road, it looked like, okay, we could just get up there, but then we were just going on and on and on. When are we going to get to the top? And they were like, Rama, you just keep going, and we're going to get there, But I don't know if you guys got there, but I gave up. I didn't want to keep going, Just keep going, and the view from the next level will be really, really good. When you get to that next level, well, you got to keep going to the next. And then finally, this is it. Like in the Big Fish, Little Fish, this is it. This is the zenith. This is the paramount. This is the topmost. But it all just crumbles into nothing. Must be full of cares and anxiety because in the material planets, one cannot live eternally. That's why there's no happiness in any material attainment, because it's all temporary. And invariably, getting there means you have to do it by hook or by crook, and other living entities have to suffer terribly for you to get to that point. And sometimes it's not just considered normal, he reached that, he worked hard, he built up the company, okay, all well and good. But maybe you become a megalomaniacal, like genocidal crime against humanity person like Adolf Hitler. And falsely rouse up, with your propaganda minister to help you, millions of people in the country who also become implicated in sinful activities and crimes against humanity. But along the way, you're thinking, wow, this is so great. This is the material world. They want an eternal home, an eternal residence, but because of accepting a temporal abode in the material world, they are naturally full of anxiety. So association with devotees under the lotus feet of their divine lordships, especially and particularly Sri Sri Radha Govinda, we are in a place of Vaikuntha. There is no birth, death, disease, and old age inside 305 Skimmerhorn Street, and probably 295 Skimmerhorn Street also as an extension. We're trying to impress upon the Department of the Department of Transportation. No, this is our place too, and we deserve the whole. By our parking our cars freely, that is Vaikuntha, without anxiety to park the cars, right? It's an extension. In the spiritual sky, the planets are called Vaikuntha because the residents of these planets are free from all anxieties. For them, there is no question. No question. When you say there's no question, say, Prabhu, is this going to... There's no question to that. No, not a chance. That's a very good expression. There's no question. No, absolutely not. So there's no question of birth, death, old age, and diseases. And therefore, there's no anxiety. A very important preaching point. How to solve the problems of life, how to get free of birth. It blows people's minds. They never hear that from anybody. We talk about your psychology, we'll talk about this. Maybe you can do, here's a new way to cure a disease, or preventative medicine, or this geopolitical conception, and you get into endless debates and arguments. But they set aside the real problem and busy themselves with trying to help other problems. Prabhupada says in one place in the Bhagavatam. On the other hand, the residents of material planets are always afraid of birth, death, disease, and old age, and therefore they're full. See, we're trying to display the joy of Krishna consciousness, and people are like, they're just so wound up in themselves, and grum and glump and twisted faces, and one can, Prabhupada said the devotee can very easily study the face as the index of the mind and understand what they're thinking and what they're coming from. Even like when we're distributing books, somebody's all like twisted and gnarled, and, but somebody's like got a smile on their face, even if it's, for the wrong reason they're smiling, then, oh, you have a beautiful smile on your face. Yeah, okay, well, let's smile together, Here's, let's smile with Lord Chaitanya. And especially at times of the week when it's appropriate to be in a party spirit, like Friday night and Saturday, then it's easy to get people to parallel their idea of happiness with the real happiness of Lord Chaitanya's movement. What is that, Rupa Goswami? The Sanskrit. But somehow or other, engage them in Krishna consciousness. Then all of the do's and do nots, rules and regulations can come later. Because if they experience the bliss of Krishna consciousness, which has absolutely no parallel, Krishna is rasagraha. Once having tasted the nectar of happiness, being sheltered at his lotus feet, one cannot live without experiencing that, endeavoring for that happiness to come again and again. This is how Krishna purifies his sadhaka bhaktas, his practicing devotees, and call it a beginner's taste. And we have to be careful. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes about, the beginner thinks, now I know everything. I've understood it all, and doesn't understand that there's a lot more in the course to complete before when it actually is to be accepted by Krishna. And Maya, yes, you have conquered. You have won. I am very pleased. Now go back home, back to Godhead. Maya's done her job. She's tested us. As Prabhupada say, have you come to serve Krishna or have you come to disturb Krishna? There's no disturbance in Vaikuntha planet. That's the whole nature of this story, and that Lord Rama is leading to, Jai and Vijay are checking the Kumaras. And what did they say? How is this discordant mentality possessed these two? This is no place for this in Vaikuntha. Better you go down to the material world, because, I forget the exact words, it's sinful mentality of Asura. People think they think others to be like themselves. So we, the Kumaras, were completely qualified to enter. And what is our purpose? Our purpose is coming in ecstasy to take darshan of our beloved Lord. We've not come like to steal. We're not a burglar breaking in to steal all the jewels of Vaikuntha and run away, with our bag of stolen goods. Ha ha ha! It's like in a cartoon or something. In the Vaikuntha planets, all the residents are similar in form to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is Sarupya Mukti, having a bodily form resembling that of the Supreme Lord. for the devotees in the male form, not male like this material world. Here they would, the demons are now trying to erase gender identification, which in Krishna's system of Varnashram Dharma is so facilitatory to bring everyone, whether they be in a male body or female body, or whatever particular mentality, Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmin, and whatever stage or status of life, student life, productive life, retired life, renounced life, to the stage of complete perfect self-realization. The demons are always keen to destroy anything to do with God, God's systems, God's natural order, God's way of doing things. Very simple. Demons are against, and Kamsa, we're hearing at Janmashtami, his ministers say, the way to kill Vishnu is to kill Vedic culture. Let's harass all the Brahmins, let's destroy all the Vedic religious activities, and let's kill all the cows. And because the demigods are and always when the Lord is there, then the devotees are there too. The Lord is never alone. He always has his devotees come help, especially when he incarnates. So they sense that. So let's kill all the children. Okay, the eighth son of Devaki, we have to be on the lookout for that one. But you know what? Could be anywhere. The omen has tricked us. It said the eighth son. We thought it was a male. It turned out to be a female, goddess Durga. Pranam, goddess Durga. Okay, we love the goddess Durga, as demons do. And we have such respect. Devaki and Vasudeva, they gave birth to goddess Durga. But still, the eighth son is going to kill you. You know what? We got to kill everybody. Like Stalin or Mao Zedong. Purge all the intellectuals. Purge everyone who is close to him, who helped him seemingly in his nefarious activities. You know what? I suspect it could be any of you. You all got to go. This is the demon. The residents are like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. So, such intimacy that your form is practically identical with that. Why I'm saying male and female is if you're seemingly in a male form, you will have a form resembling Lord Narayan. If you're in a female form, then your form will resemble Mahalakshmi, the supreme goddess of fortune. And there's no sex attraction between male and female. It's described that their husbands and wives and consorts, the term is used, with their male counterpart, but their enjoyment is so far superior, that sex life doesn't exist. And what is that enjoyment? Hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. So they have to chant, would you like to be addressed as with not he or she, but a they or a it, or I don't know, pronoun, noun, this proper noun. The discussion is just so crazy. I never tried to understand it, what the heck they're saying, But on the devotional platform, there's no fearfulness of sex attraction. So they relate with each other based on understanding how everyone has that particular form simply for the pleasure of the divine, of Lakshmi Narayan. And they are serving in that way. So the beauty of the handsomeness of the male form, the beauty of the female form is an emanation from the divine couple and ultimately to be used for their exclusive service. That is the ultimate conclusion and perfection of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And why this Kali Yuga, which is Lord Chaitanya's specific yuga, where he is distributing the topmost worship, the topmost love, Golo Kara Premadana, through his own most beloved dharma or process of Sankirtan Yagna. Here is a interesting letter. Everyone has probably seen it at some time, that Prabhupada wrote to, at the time, a very important devotee who was his editor-in-chief of what Prabhupada called, and that name hasn't been taken away, although perhaps maybe forgotten or somewhat minimized in the forgetfulness, the backbone of the Hare Krishna movement, the Back to Godhead magazine. That was a devotee named Rama Prabhu. Original name was Raymond. My advice in any circumstances, you must come out on Harinam Sankirtan at least for 1 hour a day on the streets or in the park. This is your life and soul, first business. The next duty in the order of importance, check this out, is to complete your 16 rounds every day. And we'll see in the letter, Prabhupada reiterates the same thing a second time. Then edit books, and if there is any time left, you can attend the temple program. But it is okay not to do it if you do not have enough time for it. But the street kirtan, editing and publishing books, 16 rounds of japa must be done. And the street kirtan must go on even at a cost of temporary slowing down all of the editing. Prabhupada's editing of Prabhupada's books, which is his number one mission, his life and soul. Prabhupada would become discouraged when he would be writing and the editing and the transcribing and ultimately publishing wasn't keeping a pace. But then when he got a good typist or they got it together to catch up and say and be done, then Prabhupada would be very, very enlivened and ecstatic. This street kirtan is your most important business, your first priority. Temple worship is not as important. Prabhupada writes in the first canto that we have to bring the temple to the people. People have given up the religious and pious life of their forefathers, their great and great-great-grandparents, to accept a life of crass materialism and atheism. So people are not interested in the church, temple, and mosque. Therefore, the devotees have to bring the temple to the people. So as we become enlivened in the temple, if we're bringing the temple with us, we're not going outside. We're in the temple. It's like here, we're picking up the temple, and we're bringing the temple, transporting it, and we're plopping it down where we are, and we're still in the temple. And we're inviting people to come into the temple. What do they use it? Sacred space. Sacred space. We're not going out there to be out there. We're bringing here to bring out there for their benefit. And check this out. Temple worship is not as important. If necessary, temple can be closed, but the street Harinam must not stop. You can read in the exalted literatures of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Raghunath Das Goswami, what this chanting of Hare Krishna leads to. Do not neglect such understanding. It will enthuse and enliven and fortify your spiritual intelligence always, every day, to the supreme degree. And once you're familiar with the ultimate conclusions of our exalted acharyas, and that becomes one with your heart and soul, it will be the basis for all of your endeavor and thought for the rest of your life and all of eternity. That is a fact. So this beginning intimacy of having such a form, so we can just try to understand the diversified forms of Goloka Vrindavan, how much greater that intimacy is. In Vaikuntha, such intimacy of having a form. The only difference is the Srivatsa mark and Kastuba gem that the Lord is wearing. Everyone else is similar. How can you tell the difference? It used to be like joke, all you people look alike, or whatever, where this is our, our place, or we're the majority, and all you people look alike, whatever it is. They make jokes, racial jokes, I'm buying something in Lowy Bazaar one time, and somebody comes up to me, Russian? No, man, New York. Because there's more, the more proliferation of white people in Vrindavan who are Russian than there are Americans, So anyway, whatever. Just to give you a little tiny example, a little snippet example, but they can all tell the difference between who's who, even they look so similar. Why? Because the individual nature and mood of sentiment is so unique. We join together as community, but each of us is with them or existing separate, individual, and alone. That is the mystic art of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His internal potency. Srimati Radharani, is the via media transmitting the individual service of the countless living entities for the pleasure of Krishna. Amazing. Nowhere in the material world, just contrary to our conception, do we find a human being with 4 hands. In Vaikuntha Loka, there is no occupation but the service of the Lord. So here's the reason. Everybody out there is a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, or whatever the heck they are, and they're running here and there, and, the great city, everyone is driving 80 miles an hour at breakneck, there's a place in Long Island, breakneck speed. You better watch your great neck, because it might become a breakneck. This sets the stage for great anxiety, everyone is going hither and thither. Prabhupada was lecturing on Bhagavad Gita in San Francisco in 1968. The rats, they're very expert at burrowing tunnels underground. So we're making our subways. Don't become rats, Or you're no better than a rat. You made the subway, which for New York is a wonderful accomplishment, right? Prabhupada writes in one place, no one has anything else to do except to render pure devotional service. That's it. We should keep that in mind. So we must become familiar with what is devotional service. And as far as bringing the temple to the people, Narada Muni, as a boy, living with the Bhaktivedantas, he once became caught up in that surcharged devotional atmosphere. And the mentality and mood and thinking of the Bhaktivedantas entered into his heart. Here, the atmosphere of intense devotional service is described. It is so wonderful that even an onlooker becomes caught up in the devotional attitude of the devotees. We go out there and we're mowed it out. Here's a book, it's about, love of Godhead and solve all your problems. The person looks at you and you're like, I think you need to read that book more than I do, and walks away, So we have to drink full to the brim. So that's the purpose of being in the temple, is to be enthused by their lordships, by Lord Chaitanya, by Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas, to be their representative, be their messenger. Swan, beautiful, elegant swan messenger. Rupa Goswami has written a beautiful book, Hamsadutta, the swan messenger. And Prabhupada says, I have come with a message for you, for your people. So it's not our purpose that we go out there. It's on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and all His authorized associates. Nowhere in the material world do we find a human being with 4 hands. Nowhere in the material world what is it? Manushinam Sahasresu Kastin. Only 1 in a million endeavors like we see. Don't be discouraged out there, because we're meant to give people even the tiniest fragment of good fortune. This is the material world. People have no fortune because how long have they been here? Another life, another human form of life, after going through all the systematic order of 8,400,000 species of life from the last time that they were in the human form. Again and again, bhutva, praliyat, and ultimately the destruction of the ultimate pralaya, destruction of the whole universe, being held in suspended animation in Mahavishnu and then again being put out. Prabhupada, people forget all of these creations and annihilations. They should hear of these things. Why is this described in the Bhagavatam? To get people to understand the severity of the situation and the proportionate glory and relief and beauty and desirability of the solution, Krishna consciousness. In Vaikuntha, there is no occupation but the service of the Lord, and that service is not rendered with a purpose. So Prabhupada says, when we say no purpose, it means no ulterior purpose. Anyabhilasita sunyam jnana karmani anavritam. Anukliyena Krishna no shilanam bhaktir uttama. But that service is very variegated. Prabhupada was given the order of his spiritual master, save the Western countries, preach in English. And as early as 1970, the desire arose in Prabhupada's heart, who for decades after decades tried to interest his countrymen. We see how India today has become so degraded. I remember I'm living in Vrindavan, and by the turn of the millennium, I'm seeing, people coming wearing Western clothes, especially the ladies, young ladies, like tight jeans and stuff. And I remember the Brijabasis and people who lived there were just like aghast. That's 20 years ago. Now it's commonplace. And Bollywood has just completely destroyed the consciousness, of India, emanating from Mumbai. So Prabhupada, his desire was, my spiritual master ordered me to preach in the West. I have done that, and now my desire is to preach in India. Actually, it was Krishna's desire, because everything was going so nicely in Los Angeles, the Western world headquarters, and there was some circumstance or situation. Ultimately, we can think it was Krishna's desire. I'm not going to get into the particulars. I think everybody knows. So the deity of Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish was telling to Prabhupada, I want you to go back to India. And it was like a loving argument. But no, you don't. I'm supposed to preach in the West. I just started. They just moved into the temple that year in the last few months. I want to develop this, make it the Western world headquarters. Say, no, okay, you go to India, and I'll give you a temple better than this Vatsika. And of course, that temple was the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan, which you could arguably say is it's kind of too small now. It should be bigger, like we're making the big temple in Mayapur. But specifically, Krishna told him, that temple is what I'm going to give you. So this reciprocation between oneself and Krishna, when your desire is simply to please Krishna, it leads to just miraculous, extraordinary, beautiful, and most fulfilling things. That service is not rendered with a purpose. Although every service has a particular result, the devotees never aspire for the fulfillment of their own desires. Their desires are fulfilled by rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. I'm going to have to apologize. I'm not going to get on to verse 15. That'll be for tomorrow. We'll have to do 14. We'll do 15 and 16. What can I say, So in the 10th canto, in closing, the Vishnu forms, four-handed Vishnu forms, which Krishna adopted, he became the cowherd boys and calves that were stolen by Lord Brahma, who's now giving this description of the kingdom of God, for a second of his time, but it was 1 year of earthly time in Brajadam here. And he came back to see what was happening, and he saw all the same calves and cowherd boys, each one with their exact mentality, their particular idiosyncrasies, their particular way of talking and moving and relating with each other, all the same. His mind was blown. And then after that mind blowing, it's like mind blow number 1, mind blow number 2, mind blow number 3, boom, boom, boom. Lord Brahma had a meltdown, ultimately. And then he offered his beautiful prayers, which are so important and one of the most... Anyone who gives a seminar or looks at Vaishnava prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, 14th chapter is a must. Then all those calves and cowherd boys transformed into four-handed Vishnu forms, being worshipped by all the personified categories of material nature, who Lord Brahma is very familiar with as the chief engineer of this universe. And those Vishnu forms, by their smiling and glances, protected the devotees from the modes of passion, lust in the material world, but quite to the contrary, created ever new variegated desires in devotional service. And Prabhupada writes in that purport, and Prabhupada is in Vrindavan on his departure bed. Here the memoir of Pradyumna, who was assisting Srila Prabhupada at the time. It's very, very important for devotees to hear. I search the Prabhupada memories, Pradyumna, who now resides in New York in the Bhakti Center. We had some association with him when we started the Harinam. More or less keeps to himself. He has like academic engagements, various places, Columbia, Princeton. Similar, so the devotee is protected by the Lord, Prabhupada writes in his desires. So a devotee desired, let there be a temple and seva, and what was once an empty corner has now become a great transcendental place of pilgrimage. Such are the desires of the pure devotee. So if we desire to fulfill the mission of the Lord, against all odds, against all difficulties, against all ill advice, I'll say, from others who think they know better, and we just push on, and Prabhupada said, hey, you go to America. His main godbrother, the right-hand man of his spiritual master, you were reading, in charge of the Sri Chaitanya Math, which Srila Bhakti Siddhanta himself said is the origin, the original temple, the original place. It is the place of Vrindavan in Mayapur. He erected Govardhan Hill, Radhakund, Shamakund, Ishodan, etc., etc. He said that anyone who is acting against the wishes of Chaitanya Math, namely himself, is acting erroneously and illogically. And the first thing you need to do, which you've neglected to do for so many years, is realign yourself. And after a period of, reform, and that they were inspecting you and then seeing that you're humble and agreeable, then we can see, Not at all encouraged. Airy, well-lit room. I had that on the rooftop of at Keshi Ghat. You look at the photograph of where Prabhupada was staying before Radha Damodar, Bamsi Gopal Temple. Very nice. You had a complete view of the outer rim of Vrindavan where the Yamuna makes like a semicircle. You saw the dome of the Keshi Ghat Temple, which was called the Yugalakishore Temple, and for some reason was never reestablished after the Mughal attacked. But it's there some 400 years later. Very beautiful place to be. But his spiritual master gave him an order. He couldn't print the book. He lived in Old Delhi in Chippewater. Go there. That place is You think New York City in its tightest place is a madhouse? That place is ultra madhouse. Congested, smoggy, difficult to breathe. And then where did he come? To New York City in the beginning of the winter time. The coldest winter one of the coldest winters on record since they started recording in the late 1800s. That is the glory of a pure devotee, except any austerity. Not create new austerity. You know, I do this, I fast like this, I take this Mona Brata like that. That impedes the mission of Lord Chaitanya. Useless, worse than useless, detrimental. Except the austerity of administering to the fallen conditioned souls. And whatever austerity that comes along with that, without you concocting or seeking it to get the job done, that is real tapasya. That is real practicality. All right? Hare Krishna. Vishanti yatra purusha sarve vaikunta mortaya ye namita namitena dharmena radayan harim. In the Vaikuntha planets, all the residents are similar in form to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They all engage in devotional service to the Lord without desires for sense gratification. Hare Krishna. Any question or comment? Briefly. Shri Shri Radha Govinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.